Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer Sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, folks. So great to be with you again. This is Fun Chat number 49, Jackie. We're getting close to 50 for the 50s. How about that? And how fun it is to be able to record our broadcast, whether you are sitting next to me in our recording studio or whether you are in your home in another state. And that's the beauty of our Fun Chats, is that we can visit with people all over the world. We love doing that in order to help broaden our knowledge about the 1950s, that decade that was so pivotal in our lives and in the lives of so many others. Jackie, we talk about that in our book, don't we?
We do. And speaking of book, if you will all please peruse your screen, I would like to have you note two things. Look in the upper right-hand corner. There's a photo of our book, and you'll notice the little white mark on the bottom. You can't really read it, but what it says is this. It is the 2022 Independent Press Award given to us as a distinguished favorite in the category of regional nonfiction. That award was given to us in April and was just such a wonderful, wonderful surprise. I also want you to look at the bottom. You'll see that purple banner, and there is our website is moving across the bottom. So you can, if you don't catch it the first time, you can catch it the second time. www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. Back to the book. That book is has been noted in a variety of venues, but I do want to point out that the cover is of a beautiful North Dakota sunset that wraps around the book. The windmill in the front and the two little girls in the front, the silhouette. You'll learn more about those two items when you read the book. But now we are here with a wonderful guest. We are so anxious to have you meet Bill Garrett. Now, Bill was raised in a farming community in Bullitt County, Kentucky, 24 miles south of Louisville. The farming community was known for producing tobacco, dairy products, chickens, and eggs. Bill was born in 1958, but grew up in the 1940s and 50s culture. He was raised by his maternal grandparents, who were products of the Depression. Bill, welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Well, thank you, ladies. It's a pleasure to be on your program and being number 49.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good number.
Is it 49 for 49 years old? Is that how you label it for you?
No, I just call it number 49.
Okay. So, Bill, we're going to begin this by setting the stage by listening to a few things about your childhood. Your childhood living conditions might have been referred to as meager. In order to establish a basis for this chat, please tell us about those living conditions with your grandparents.
Well, it's interesting, when you're young, you're before you go to school, you don't have a real understanding of how it compares with others. So I thought it was normal. We lived in an older 2-story farmhouse, and we did not have indoor plumbing. And so, we had to gather our water. We had to heat part of the house with wood and another portion of the house with what some people would call coal oil, but modern day kerosene.
I remember
Yeah.
that term being used.
So these were the physical conditions, but what about the qualities that your grandparents instilled into you, those intangibles?
Well, when you grow up on a farm, you learn about work at an early age and what that means, and hard work. So, at a very early age, I remember I wasn't big enough and strong enough to lift the bales of hay to put them on the wagon. But I learned how to drive. I learned how to drive the tractor. So I pulled the wagon, and my grandfather, my brother, they would load the hay on the wagon. And then, but as you get older, you have to lose that privileged job of driving, and so, and then it was a small dairy farm, so you learn about cleaning out the barn and taking care of milking cows, and I tell people cows gives us two things: milk and manure. So you have to deal with both.
Yes. Were you involved with quite a bit of the milking, Bill?
On and off. I had an older brother. He was mainly responsible for helping my grandfather with that work. My responsibilities mainly centered around the house. So I helped with dishes and making sure we had all of our water, drinking water, and other water that was needed for the day gathered in the house. And then I would also make sure that we had enough firewood in the house for the wood stove in the kitchen.
Did your mother teach you to bake or to cook along with the other responsibilities of indoor?
Some. I would say most of my cooking experience I developed on my own.
Okay.
But I do love to cook and bake, and I'm challenged to try new things, and I can make biscuits and gravy or anything like that. And I love to cook, and it was a little unique at home. I have to say, my grandparents really had no business raising boys. There were three of us altogether. I had a younger brother. And, it's later in life, my grandmother had some health issues when we were young. And so she had her good days and bad days. She was in the bed a lot, there were good days when she would bake and fried chicken and make lemon meringue pies, my favorite. So I remember those things.
Yes. And are you a pie baker or not?
No, not necessarily. I'm not necessarily a pie baker. I like to experiment with some dishes. I cook a lot. My wife, she's very busy with the job that she has. So if I get home before she does, I'll prepare dinner.
Nice.
So would you say this is a skill that you have learned that has helped you and is important in life, or would you consider it minor? And would you be able to think of another skill or skills that you developed as a youngster that have carried through to your present life?
Well, I'd say the cooking skills, it's not something that has prepared me for today. It's just something I enjoy to do. I'd say the hard work and good work ethic and understanding the importance of good character and integrity. Those are probably the most important things that I learned growing up. And also I learned that if I was going to succeed, if I was going to better myself, it was up to me. And I learned that real early. And that's what really has helped me to where I am today.
Bill, tell us, how did you go about learning to succeed? What did you do to establish that in your life?
Well, I mentioned, that you grow up in a house without indoor plumbing, and you don't have necessarily the privileges of taking that shower every day that a lot of people are accustomed to. And
Hmm.
this may sound a little ridiculous, but that's just fact. And I said that cows give us two things. They give us milk and manure. And there are times when you may go to school smelling like the barn. And I remember those insults, and I remember being picked on as a kid.
Hmm.
And then I learned, after I would visit my friends and I would see how
Hmm.
the things that they had, and I started making comparisons, and I learned then. I said, I will not live like this for the rest of my life. Now, we had food on the table. We were loved. We were cared for. We had a roof over our head and a warm bed.
Hmm.
But if you can decide in a young, you decide
Mhm.
where you want to go with your life. You can stay where you are, or you can advance based on your own desires, your drive to succeed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Exactly.
Correct. So can you think of a very wise message from either your childhood or from more recently that has sustained you and propelled you daily or weekly, occasionally?
Well, there's a couple things. The first one being, as I said, you can make the decision to stay where you are, or
Mhm.
you can decide to
Hmm.
advance yourself. That's up to you. And on my wall, I could get it hang and show it to you, but I have a water dipper that and I found it at the Walnut Antique Store. And when I bought it, my wife says, "What are you doing with that?" I said, "It's an object lesson.
Yes.
It's an object lesson." So I had someone that could do some really nice, neat writing on the handle, and they wrote the word choices on the handle. And
Hmm.
and that hangs on my office wall below an airplane propeller because I can fly today. I had a desire to learn how to fly an airplane, and I learned how to do that. But the dipper it's an object lessons that choices is what you make choices to determine where you're going to be and what you're going to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
So
the,
you are, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish up.
well, the other thing I said, that I have told others that you can always remember times change. Nothing remains the same.
Mhm.
And when you're young and you're a teenager and you're growing up, you get real impatient for those changes to come about. Just be patient. They will come more quicker. They'll come very quick. And sometimes they'll come quicker than you really want them to.
Hmm.
So,
You as plant manager of the Coca-Cola in Atlantic, Iowa, you are responsible and kind of, I can't say mother hen, but responsible for a team. And how do you build a team, a cohesive team?
um, yeah, everyone on my team, all my leadership staff, I've handpicked because we have made a huge transition with this plant since the Tylers have grown this business back in when they decided to make the change in 2016 to acquire more territory. So I look for people. If you have a desire to learn and a drive to be successful and willing to be part of a team, we can accomplish anything. And some things we're going to have to learn and we'll figure it out. But you give me those things and where we all work together as a team, no one is more important than the other person. And I tell my staff all the time, my job is to ensure your success. And that success will elevate us and get us where we need to go.
Mhm. Did you feel that teamwork on your farm or in your local town area, even when you were in school? Did you sense that, or was that something that was driving you as you became a teenager and a young adult?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of times you don't think about those until you're older and you look back.
Hmm.
And I tell a story in 1969. Now, I know this is a 50s show, but like I said, I grew up in the culture of the 50s.
You
So in
bet.
1969, my grandfather went into the hospital. I was 11, and my older brother was 13. And when you go in the hospital, when you went in the hospital then, they kept you a while. The insurance company wasn't pushing you out the door. So this was January, and we had an ice storm, and we lost power for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And we had 42, 43 head of cattle to milk twice a day. So that meant we needed to do that by hand. That was this
Mhm.
11-year-old boy and a 13-year-old boy doing this work
Yes.
before we went to school. So um, we did that for a week by ourselves. And then the neighbors found out. Two young boys are down there at the farm milking these cows by hand. And somebody brought us a generator to get
Oh,
power in
yes.
the barn. And
Yes.
oh my goodness, that was the biggest godsend ever. Trying
Yes.
to do that by hand, and that was a chore. And somebody brought a generator down to help us out to get
Yes.
power back in the barn.
Mhm.
And I can still remember back in the day the names of all those folks that lived around us,
Mhm.
and I think about that from time to time, and the contribution that was made to the community. So
Mhm.
we kind
Yes.
of live far apart, but you're still close.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Were you was your neighboring town or your hometown, is that where you shopped, or did you go beyond that area?
well, we shopped in Shepherdsville, but my grandfather, he had an egg route in Louisville.
Mm, mhm.
And on Fridays, he would load up his trunk full of eggs in these big cases. And he
Yeah.
would, every Friday, he would go into Louisville and he had a certain route. He had the certain customers
Mhm.
that he would deliver eggs to. And he had a woven wood basket. And I
Mhm.
still have that today. It's on my mantle at home.
Mhm.
That he would gather these eggs out of his trunk, and he'd just go up and he'd open the kitchen door and he'd walk in and fill the refrigerator. It was just that kind of community.
Yes.
Mhm.
And there were, during Christmas break and sometimes in the summertime, we got the opportunity to go with him and
Mhm.
experience that. And
Mhm.
we would go and deliver eggs, and then there was a certain tavern in town. He'd stop for lunch, and we would have our lunch, and then finish the route. But then at the end of the route, he would take the money that he made from selling these eggs and go to the grocery, and
Mhm.
he'd buy the groceries for the week and bring them home.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
uh, that's kind of how that was done. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he was a wise shopper. He knew how to find the bargains.
It sounds similar to our life in
It
the
is.
business and an egg route in Bismarck. I'm following our dad around. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I remember about being with dad on that egg route is seeing the camaraderie that he had with his customers and the trust that they had with each other. And as you noted, they'd leave the money for whatever amount was going to be. You left the right amount of eggs, and there was never a question asked.
Hmm.
It was watching our the generations ahead of us use that integrity, which imprinted in our brains, which, at least for my life anyway, growing up in the 50s and 60s, it was imprinted there. And that's the way I knew that I would be as an adult. And I think that's how it was for many people in the 50s.
There's a lot of education there, a lot to be learned from that culture, from how
Yes.
those things occurred back then.
Yes, that's true. Were you, so many of our guests, who had chickens talk about not only an egg experience, but they talk about how they had to take care of the spent hens or the young chicks as they were ready for processing or ready for eating. Did you get involved with that also?
Oh, I did. And my grandfather, he could gather eggs like none other. He'd just stick his hand under the chicken and pull the eggs out. Now, I would hesitate when I would do it. And it was almost like the chicken thought I was teasing her and she'd bite me. And so you just have to go in with confidence and just put your hand under that chicken, get the egg. And that's all there was to it. But I remember also a story. I remember a time I was very young. I was just probably old enough to be able to have, a conversation and walk to the barn. And I walked to the barn one day and I looked into this big open window, and my grandfather was delivering a calf.
Oh, yes.
And I saw that and I went, oh my, how'd that calf get there? And he said, you go to the house and you send somebody else up here to help me.
Oh, he thought you were too young, huh? Yeah.
But I must admit, farm kids do have an advantage that way in learning about birthing.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And how, even how the whole process of reproduction begins too.
You learn at a very early age. Yes.
Yes. So
Indeed.
Did you ever have experience in that veterinary on the farm work?
Or my brother and I delivered twins once.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we did that. The one of them didn't survive, but the other one did. And but then
was it hard to figure out which legs went with which animal?
No, actually, it wasn't that complicated. But I think one of them was either breached or came the wrong direction, so that created the complications. And we were just young boys. We didn't. Sure. We did what we could. So, but I think the real fun part about that is when you teach a calf how to drink from a bucket. Oh, and I learned that, you stick their hand in their mouth. And we didn't have a fancy bucket with a nipple on it. You stick your hand in your mouth and you dunk their head in that milk, and they'll pick it up pretty quick. And then just walk through the field with a bucket in your hand, and you will get a visitor. So
sure. Did you always grow out your calves from these dairy cows, or did you sell them as veal calves?
We sold a lot of them. He, once he established a herd of milk, he had a stopping point, and he would sell calves to the local buyers, local farmers around.
Sure. Yes. Bill, tell us about when you went to school. Was it a country school, or was it a school in town, or how was that in your young years?
Well, the school was in Shepherdsville, so it was a long bus ride.
All right.
I remember catching the bus about 7:00 in the morning and getting on, and one of my good friends that I used to, he got on the bus before I did. His name was Paul, and he would always save me a seat. I would sit with him. And then one summer, Paul got hit while he was on his bicycle, and he was killed. So I was very young, and that's another thing that I had to experience, and that is the death of a friend at a very young age. So,
sorry.
But it's not much different then than it is today about, kids getting picked on.
Mhm.
That's just, you just need to learn how to deal with it. And that hasn't changed much over the years. So.
No.
Okay.
And so because you came from a country setting and you went to a town school, were there any complications there or any adverse feelings or in ways you were treated by others because you were from the country?
Well, not necessarily because I was from the country. I mean, during that time period in 1969, it was kind of rough because we missed a lot of school that winter. And so that was a little challenging. I had an older brother. He was 2 years older than me. He challenged the teachers quite a bit. So when it came time for me to be in their class, they had a mindset. He's one of those Garrett boys. He'll be trouble. So that was a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And I always resented that. And, that made me work harder to prove them wrong.
That's right. Yep.
Then how did that affect your younger brother? He saw the example of your older brother and you. Who did he pattern after?
That's a tough one. You start getting into difficulties of the childhood, and being honest, I shoot you straight. So
okay,
that's fine.
You plead the fifth there. Plead the fifth.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, when I said my grandparents had no business raising young boys, we didn't get all the attention that a lot of parents give their kids, especially with homework and making sure that they're following through on their assignments and studying and reading. We didn't get that. And if we didn't capture that on our own, then we missed out, unfortunately. And I experienced a little bit about that probably around the 8th and 9th grade. And then I woke up and you can't be lackadaisical. You're going to have to buckle down and get this done. So, I'm blessed. And sometimes I wonder, how did I end up where I am today? Because my older brother and my younger brother, neither one of them took the same path. And it's sad that I was the first one in my family to graduate high school. And I was the first one in my family to graduate college. So
good for you. You said what was the cause of where you are today. You could see that you had to make some changes in the situation that you were living in, and you had to make choices. And you chose the life that you live now.
Somehow I figured it out early.
Good for you. Yeah.
And I had a plan and stuck with it.
And those who know you and are fortunate to work under you or with you are blessed.
Bill, we're getting near the end of our fun chat, but there are always two questions that I like to ask our guests. One is there a fun memory, anything fun that you can think about in this 1950s culture that you remember?
Growing up in where I did on the farm, we had over 200 acres, and it wasn't the best flat land farm like you see in some of these Iowa communities. But as a kid growing up, we had the best area for adventure that anybody could ever ask for. We had hills, we had fishing streams and creeks, and there were 3 large waterfalls on our property.
Really?
I mean, it was an adventure every day, and I lived in the woods. And
cool.
But unfortunately, I got poison ivy every summer, really bad. So for doing that, but I look back at that, and I could say today, I could go back and live, knowing what I know today. I could go back and live and be happy with that life. I know today. We didn't have everything that a lot of people had, but we had what we needed.
Yes. Yes.
And we were
That's,
happy.
yep, great.
And then the second question that I like our viewers to know is, what was it from the 1950s or that culture that imprinted on your life that you present and demonstrate today in your adult life?
I learned how to be a visionary person
Oh.
and how to think and say things are like this right now. What do you want them to be? What direction you want things to go? This is where you are. This is where you want to be. Okay. How are you going to get there? That has helped me tremendously. In the towns my wife and I have lived in the various homes that we've lived in, going through the purchasing of a home, and you think, okay, I see it, but this is what we would do to make it our own.
Yes.
A lot of that, and then this plant coming into this plant, we've tripled the volume here in 5 years. So,
Oh my gosh.
so thinking through that and having that vision, and I'm a visual person, so I see things in my head probably a lot different than other people. That is probably one of the greatest things that's helped me in my career.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Viewers, friends, our guest today has been Mr. Bill Garrett from Atlantic, Iowa, and he is the plant manager of the Atlantic Bottling Company, based Coca-Cola. And if you recall, in one of our previous fun chats, we had visited with the owner of that plant, Mr. Jim Tyler. When Jackie was visiting me in Atlantic, the Tylers extended an invitation to us to tour the plant. And Bill and Janie Tyler gave us the grand tour, and it was wonderful. We felt so special, first off, but we also learned a lot about the manufacturing and bottling of Coca-Cola and the whole history of the Tyler family. So this has been a great follow-up to learn about the beginnings and what makes their plant manager tick, because it's a very successful business in Atlantic, and it will continue through the generations. So Bill, thank you very much for being our guest. We just so enjoyed this.
We appreciate you.
Yes.
The pleasure has been all mine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So folks, until next time on our 1950s Fun Chat, when we have another guest who will share some more exciting stories from that 1950s decade, we hope that you remember that special time of, in many cases, poodle skirts, malt shops, cool cars, but having a strong work ethic. That's what seems to be coming out so many stories of our guests on the 1950s Fun Chat. And Jackie, not only do we have fun things to talk about the book and wrapping up, but there's some other exciting news we'd like to share too.
We would like to share that we have been honored by Mr. Daniel Malinsky, Canticle Productions. He has decided that he would like to make a motion picture based on our book, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America. And we hope that you will stay tuned for further information. Janine, do you want to share anything more about that at this time?
I think more information will be at our website, and you'll see it scrolling at the bottom, and on our Facebook pages, the 1950s Fun Chat, While the Windmill Watched, and of course Jackie's and my personal Facebook pages. But presently, the film is set to be produced in the year of 2023, and prior to that, of course, funding has to be arranged, and Dan pretty much takes care of all that. But Jackie and I decided that, we'd like to have a hand in this also. So we are, even though we receive no financial benefit from that film, we want to make people aware that this film is being made. And if they choose to be a part of that development funding, you can contact us and we can get you lined up with Dan, who will give you all of the particulars. It's a really, I think, for making a motion picture, it's a small amount that's needed to start the wheels rolling for creating the film. That amount is $25,000, and it can be given in a variety of ways and in a variety of amounts. But again, we can give much more specific information about that.
And as you're looking at our page right now, you see a red subscribe button. Please do hit that, as well as the thumbs up button. That really helps us figure out, track the number of people. And we hope that you may be able to even share this on your Facebook page. This has been a very interesting interview with Mr. Bill Garrett.
Yes.
So
until next time, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.